Zack Polanski is now the leader of the Green Party. He's been pretty present in the media over the last 6 months, and now he started his own podcast, Bold Politics, and his first guest is Sarkar. I wanted to go over a little bit of it because they talk about the future of left politics. Make sure you go and subscribe to the channel right now, and let's get straight into the video.
You bored of hearing about Nigel Farage? Me too. Yeah. I am so sick of hearing about so-called right-wing populism. Why does no one understand what populism means? It means the 99% versus the 1%. Those lot are literally the 1%. So it's time for a podcast that stands up for the 99%. Welcome to Bold Politics. I'm Zack Polanski. As a leader, I really want to serve the 99%, and this podcast is going to reflect that. I'm going to speak to people I really respect, and people I disagree with as well. I'm delighted that my very first guest on the show is someone I really respect, and I have some disagreements with. Sarkar has been a really important...
Tell me in the comments, what do you think of the name of the podcast? I think you need something like based, something a bit more like young people, based politics. Radical politics, cool politics. Tell me in the comments below your thoughts.
Voice on the left for over a decade now. Incredibly opinionated, incredibly smart. Let's get into it. Ash, I want to start with a secret.
Oh, God.
Out of everyone that interviewed me during the general election, you were the interview that made me most nervous. And that's because...
Was it the gun held at your head?
That partly made the heartbeat go up. But you're so smart, you're so articulate, your analysis of politics is incredible, and I knew I wasn't going to get away with any crap. And more than anything, you're very funny. And when you're a politician and you're in serious mode and someone is being funny, it's really hard to do that tightrope between I've got to be taken seriously and have credibility, but also be a human being that kind of laughs at your jokes and gets them.
I think I don't envy politicians at all, because I think the thing that you have to do is really, really hard. And it's easy for me as somebody who doesn't have to represent a political party, doesn't have to represent a membership, to just go out and be like, okay, this is a version of myself. Because I'm not having to put it through any sort of prism of purpose or, an agreement of what I'm trying to get out of it. Whereas for you guys, it's like, okay, be a human being, be charming, be real, be authentic, remember all of the policy lines, remember all your weak points and sort of triangulate around them. Don't forget to be serious, but also, a bit of a laugh at the same time. It's all of these contradictory things at once. And so when I'm watching politicians, I go, ooh, like, don't do that thing, or like, you're doing that. I also realise that you do have to train yourself you have to create a little bit of a persona, because if you didn't, I'm not sure if you could survive the psychological toll of the media around.
So I have pre-planned questions. I'm already going off script because this is really interesting. I've heard you say several times on podcasts and interviews, I'd never run to be an MP. I've either got skeletons in my closet or... But I just think you have such an incredible authenticity about you that I think it's really sad if someone like you goes, I think if you don't want to get into politics, that's a different conversation. But if it's, I feel too restricted by my past, I think that's really sad.
I don't know. I think there's a few things. One is that I think there's a contradiction at the heart of my politics, which is, on the one hand, I want to be part of essentially a movement that advances the cause of communism in this country. On the other, the freedom to write whatever it is I want and to say whatever it is I happen to think. I mean, that's the height of bourgeois individualism. And so these two things are quite contradictory. I really want to write and I want to say the things that feel honest, but I also want this cause to be successful. So I realise that there is something there which doesn't quite fit together. I think there's another part, which is... already, I find the pressure to give everybody a good experience of me a bit much. And I need spaces that I can retreat to and just be a complete idiot or like really reckless and not have to think about how am I being perceived. And already I feel that space getting too small. And I don't know, right now it just doesn't feel like I could... like I've got it in me to give it all up completely and go straight into like you are 100% a public figure and that's all you are.
I'm taking that as a win though, because you said right now and previously you said no, which looks ahead to the future. Another thing you say that I think relates is you say that anyone can be
That's interesting because it seems to be like, oh, is he trying to get her in the party? Because she is a strong voice. I love Ash Sarkar. She's great. Her book is really great. Um, and I think I really like Zack. I think he's great, but I think he is a bit too nice. I think we need a bit of a shameless psychopath in a way. It's a contradiction, but I think we need someone who's just like, will just say how it is, doesn't care. It's just all about attacking the wealthy, being feisty, being really strong. And I really do think we need to learn from the right that they're shameless and they have bad consequences. We can be a lot more strong. We can really just really attack Keir Starmer. I really hope, because he's really good anyway at attacking Keir Starmer, but he really needs to go for the jugular and just be like, this guy, no one likes Keir Starmer. He's the worst politician. He's weak. He doesn't have any values. He flip-flops. He changes his mind. What is he doing? I'm the solution. I want to raise your wages, tackle climate change, get rid of Nigel Farage. No one likes Nigel Farage. He's not going to increase your wages. He's not going to build houses. He's not going to make the NHS better. He wants to get rid of it. We need to be stronger. And I think with time and the more exposure he gets, hopefully he'll become more confident and stronger in his attacks on Farage and Keir Starmer.
Left wing or anyone can be a socialist or indeed a communist up until the point of foreign policy. And that's when the media will go, no. What do you mean by that?
Well, it wasn't until that long ago, I mean, I think it was up until the 80s, that every staff member being hired by the BBC had to be vetted by the security services. And you can see it with the prescription of Palestine Action and what's been coming out about all the different figures who've been lobbying the government to crack down on Palestine Action, including arms manufacturer lobbyists. And, forgive me if I'm getting this wrong because I don't want to get you in trouble with Ofcom, but I believe there was some lobbying done by Lord Dannett as well. You've got all these figures who sort of come out of the woodwork when it's time to look at Britain's role in the world and its role in destabilizing other countries in the global south. There are wonderful books about this for your listeners who are interested. Vincent Bevins' The Jakarta Method, which looks at the ways in which the US basically backed death squads around the world to crack down on socialism and communism. So there are examples that your listeners might be really familiar with. So the US-backed coup in Chile, which resulted in Allende being deposed. That was a big US warship off the coast of Santiago when all this was going down, but also other examples which are less well known. So, the scale of the devastation in Indonesia, for example, and Britain as a former imperial power and in the 20th century having to work out what's our new status in the world. We did some fucked up shit. Like we really did. When it comes to domestic policy, yes, there's a huge disciplining force in the media, and you've experienced that yourself. With foreign policy, it's something else. So I do say this half jokingly. I was like, we wanted Jeremy Corbyn to be Prime Minister 2015, 2019. What we weren't prepared for was what happens if he wins.
Right.
Because they're not just going to let him have access to, everything that the Foreign Office has ever done.
And I realise this isn't your problem, it's maybe my problem or other people's problem, but we've seen it in Chile, we've seen it with Yanis Varoufakis, we've seen it with Jeremy Corbyn. Does this just mean we can never have a left-wing Prime Minister?
No, never say never. I mean, I think this is part of the history of the left, which is everything seems impossible until it happens.
Right.
My mum was an anti-apartheid activist, and she told me that she did all of those sit-ins and she got arrested all those times, and she, been telling people to boycott Barclays, and she never thought she'd see a free South Africa. And then she did. I'm sure that Lenin was looking at Imperial Russia going, oh, this seems uphill. But they did it. So absolutely never say never, but be...
My fear is that we'll have to have a Farage before we can have a left-wing Prime Minister. And I don't want that. No one wants that. If you look at his policies, what he will actually do, he's going to undermine the welfare state, the NHS, education, freedom of speech, immigration, freedom of movement. But I fear we almost have to have that failure for people to wake up and go, oh yes, actually, we do need to tax the wealthy, control media in some way, challenge, the monopoly of Amazon, Google. We need to actually have a serious conversation. We can't just blame all our problems on immigrants and transes.
Strategic and clear-eyed about what's in your way.
And that does lead me to what was going to be my first question, which is, you've survived the Corbyn years and you say you bear the scars of the Corbyn years. What do you think we should be learning from that? And what do you think we need to have in terms of eyes on the future?
So many things. And I've got things to say.
I've got a list here.
Oh, yeah. I've got things for the Green Party and also things for, this new, Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana party. But here's the thing for the Greens specifically. Sure. One is that I think people were really unprepared, including myself, for what the scale of the assault was going to be like. And particularly when it came to the weaponization of anti-Semitism, we really tied ourselves in knots. And I think there are good reasons for that. One of the reasons why we tied ourselves in knots so much is because when someone's coming to you and saying, I'm in pain and I'm in fear and I'm in a state of distress, you can't really be like, oh, fuck off. Like, you can't, right? That's a really unempathetic thing to do. But we didn't know how to manage the fact that perceived risk and actual risk were two really different things. And we'd say things because it sounded good, like, oh, one anti-Semite in the movement is too many. But imagine I said that about misogyny, right? One misogynist in the movement is too many, or one Islamophobe is too many. There are loads of misogynists and Islamophobes. And so if you say, well, every single one that's here is our failure, you've made a rod for your own back, because every movement reflects the society that produced it. And that doesn't mean that it's open season on slurs and everyone can say, their preferred horrible thing. But it's realizing that whenever you start advancing a prefigurative form of politics, like, we've got to get it right internally before we can do anything, guess what? You're not going to do anything. So that's, I think, part of the reason for why we found that so difficult to deal with. Second thing, and this is something which I am really implicated in, is between 2017 and 2019, I thought the job of the left was to make sure that the 2019 manifesto was as socialist and as radical as possible. So we wanted the 4-day week in there. We wanted some kind of universal basic income. We wanted to abolish private schools. And Boris Johnson's manifesto, by contrast, was get Brexit done on the back of a fag packet. And that was it. That was it. And he won. So there's a temptation to go for the proximate objective, or the proximate opponent. So this would have been opponents within the Labour Party. But this is what James Butler calls the Father Dougal problem. This cow is close but really small, and this one's far away and massive. Go for the cow that's far away and massive. And I think that's something for the Greens to think about as well, is a healthy internal democratic culture is one thing, but it can suck you into looking inwards too much. And then there's the last thing. I made a real mistake around the Brexit time, which is when it reached this impasse, didn't feel like there was leadership coming from the top and everyone had to say what they thought should happen. I said, second referendum, because I was in London surrounded by people like me and everyone was a Remainer. So that put me not just on the losing side of 48%, but on the side which was much more liberal and technocratic rather than populist. And it was populism from which Corbynism drew its strength. So the thing I was advocating for was taking us away from where we were strongest. And there will be things like that for the Greens to have to contend with, where it's not a fun choice and it's not a good choice and you don't want to have to make it, but that's the situation you're in.
And how do you think you balance that? So we're talking on a day when...
I agree with all of that. But the broader issue that Zack and the Greens will face is just the media environment. Like, if you saw my going over the not GB News. Oops, sorry. I don't even know what it's called. This morning, the other one, I don't care what it is. I don't watch it. Where Susanna Reid was just asking these questions about his hypnotherapist past. And it was 4 minutes for the interview. That's the real challenge Zack Polanski faces, is that how do we cut through on the immigration lies? Because, there's going to be problems with messaging, but we need to keep discipline to tax wealth, not work. That's a real one that's cutting through. 75% of the population wants some form of wealth tax. We need to hammer in on that. And we need to just be like calling out the media, challenging the media, challenging Keir Starmer in the strongest terms. Yes, messaging is important, but we have to keep it simple. Like, we need to learn from Farage, stop the boats, and make, get Brexit done. We need to just be simple and just repetitive, because Trump is great at this. Like, Trump is so good at just saying the same thing. Like, stop the illegal aliens coming over. We just need to be really, just bring it back to basics. Because although I agree with all the stuff Ash Shark has said there, we need to really just learn the lessons of winning, and that's simple messaging. Repetition, repetition, repetition.
When I was on GMB this morning with three people shouting at me about wealth tax, and someone texted me whose opinion I really respect. He said,
good morning, Brit. So bad.
That was amazing. By the way, though, you could have reassured Middle England first before you got into the fight. And my response, other than thanking them for the feedback, was, it doesn't feel like my job to reassure Middle England.
Yeah, I think we kind of just overthink things on the left. We're just like, oh, we've got to do this. The messaging. It's like, the right don't do that. They're just like, come up with a slogan, just repeat it, get your voice out there, just lie, do whatever it takes. We need to be fucking shameless and be like, yeah, tax wealth. The billionaires are robbing from us. When was the last time you had a pay rise? Look at how wages have gone down in real terms. Look at our infrastructure. I can't get a doctor's appointment. Where's all the money? Look at where all the money is. In 400 families. We need to just completely make it like, who's really the problem? Is it the billionaires, or is it little refugee coming over? Which one is it? Which of those two has power, wealth, and influence in society? And they have to go, well, obviously the billionaire. Well, can we go for the billionaires then, please?
And it feels my job to present a policy that I think is pretty popular around the country and actually...
Right, we'll end there. Go and watch the rest of the interview. It's really good, and they go into more detail. It'd be interesting to see who he has on, if it's going to be a weekly thing. Make sure you subscribe to Bold Politics with Zack Polanski. Join the cause. Tell me your thoughts below. What are your thoughts on Zack? Can he cut through in the media environment where Farage has been normalised and enabled by just very little pushback, just parroting the same old tired illegal immigration tropes? Tell me your thoughts below, and I'll see you next time.